The air in the university hospital buzzed with the sounds of life-distant laughter, the rustle of nurses moving briskly through the halls, the gentle beeping of machines monitoring patients. Laura adjusted her white coat as she walked through the main corridor, her heart racing not just from the day's responsibilities, but from the weight of the past that loomed over her like a storm cloud. It had been years since she had stepped into this institution, a place that had once been her dream before the burdens of life had altered her path. Today was different. Today she was a doctor. Each step resonated with her hard-earned accomplishments, and the bittersweet memories of sacrifice flooded her mind. After her father's sudden death, she had paused her education to support her family, her dreams set aside like forgotten textbooks. Yet, through sheer determination, she had carved a place for herself in a world that had once denied her the chance. Just as she rounded a corner, her gaze met the last person she expected to see: Tony. He stood there, leaning against a wall, arms crossed and a smug expression plastered on his face. Tony, her ex-husband, had the same dark hair and piercing blue eyes that had once captivated her, now twisted with an arrogance that made her stomach churn. "Well, if it isn't my little doctor," he sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. "Did you finally learn how to read all those textbooks, or did you get a tutor?" The sting of his words hit her like a slap. For a fleeting moment, doubt crept in, but Laura steadied herself. She could feel the eyes of passing staff on them, curious glances darting her way, but she refused to let him see her flinch. Instead, she straightened her posture and met his gaze with unwavering resolve. "Actually, Tony, I graduated at the top of my class. I didn't need a tutor, I had motivation." Her voice remained calm, but inside a storm brewed. "You know, it's kind of sad," he continued, feigning a thoughtful tone, "to see you waste your potential on a profession that doesn't pay as well as a nice corporate job." He chuckled, clearly relishing the discomfort he was causing her. Laura inhaled deeply, drawing on the strength she'd built over the years. This moment was a test, a reminder of the man she had once loved and the emotional chains he had tried to bind her with. "You wouldn't understand," she replied coolly. "I chose this path because it matters to me, not because of a paycheck. Some of us actually care about helping people." As she turned to walk away, she felt a sense of triumph swell within her. The years of belittlement, the emotional toll of his condescending remarks, had forged her resilience. No longer would she be a shadow of herself, living in the reflection of his expectations. The stark white walls of the hospital felt like a sanctuary compared to the tumultuous memories of her marriage. Laura remembered the days following her father's death, when she had put aside her education to help her mother, struggling to keep their family afloat. With every missed class, every time she had taken a job to support her younger siblings, the weight of her sacrifices grew heavier. She had been determined to be the pillar of strength, but in doing so, she had pushed aside her own dreams. Her mother had relied on her, and Laura never resented that responsibility until it became intertwined with her marriage. Tony had seemed so supportive in the beginning. "You can always go back to school," he'd assured her, charmingly sweeping her into his world of privilege and comfort. But once they were married, his views shifted dramatically. "You can't juggle both," he had insisted, coaxing her into leaving her job to manage their home. Laura had complied, believing it was what a good wife should do. Now, as she walked through the familiar halls of the university hospital, Laura felt a renewed sense of purpose. The life she had fought to build was at her fingertips. She had finally returned to school, pushing through the late nights of study while juggling clinical rounds. The sacrifices had paid off. She was a doctor now, and nothing could take that from her. But every victory had a price. As she passed the nurse's station, she overheard snippets of gossip about her ex-husband's recent struggles, his job loss, his reckless spending, and rumors of a new affair. Laura felt a pang of sympathy mixed with the bitter taste of vindication. He had often belittled her dreams, yet here she stood, a beacon of resilience, while he floundered in his own self-created chaos. Months passed, and the hospital became a second home for Laura. She thrived in her new role, gaining respect from colleagues and forging meaningful connections with her patients. Each day was filled with challenges that invigorated her spirit, but even amidst her triumph, the memories of her marriage haunted her. Tony's belittling comments echoed in her mind during the quiet moments, taunting her insecurities. One evening, while reviewing a patient's case in the break room, her thoughts drifted back to their marriage. How had she let him diminish her? She recalled the day she had found out about his affair. The insidious feeling of betrayal cut deep. She had returned home to find him wrapped in the arms of another woman, a stranger, in their own bed. The confrontation had been explosive, a cocktail of rage and heartbreak. "You think I don't deserve more?" she had screamed, her voice hoarse with disbelief. But instead of remorse, she had faced his typical mockery. "You wouldn't know how to keep a man interested, Laura. You're too focused on your dreams." That day had been the catalyst for her change. The pain ignited a fire within her, a determination to reclaim her life. She had filed for divorce, a decision that had shattered her world but ultimately freed her from his oppressive grip. Now, with her career flourishing, she realized how far she had come from the girl who once cowered under his disdain. Yet the past didn't stay buried. One day, as Laura was preparing for a medical conference, she received a call from her mother, her voice strained and anxious. "Laura, it's about your father's old business. It seems there are complications with the estate. We need your help." Laura's heart sank as her mother revealed that their father's business dealings were not as straightforward as they had thought. Hidden debts and unresolved partnerships were surfacing, threatening to unravel the fragile security her family had built. The shock of it all sent waves of anxiety through her, forcing her to confront not just her past, but the legacy of sacrifice her father had left behind. The weight of family responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders once more, but this time she had the strength of her accomplishments to buoy her. "I'll handle it, Mom. I promise," she assured her, a quiet resolve solidifying within her. It was time to uncover the truth behind the secrets that had long been buried in their family history. Over the next few weeks, Laura delved deep into the financial records, meeting with accountants and uncovering the layers of deception that had clouded their family's past. Each document she examined brought her closer to understanding her father's decisions, revealing a complex man caught in a web of financial strain and ambition. As she unraveled the layers of deceit, Laura found herself returning to the hospital each day with a renewed sense of purpose. The more she learned about her father's business struggles, the more she recognized the parallels with her own life. She, too, had battled against the odds to reclaim her identity, and now it was her turn to ensure her family would not fall victim to the same fate. As Laura became more immersed in her father's affairs, she stumbled upon a name that sent chills down her spine: Tony. His involvement in her father's business dealings was a shock, revealing a deeper betrayal that intertwined their lives in ways she never anticipated. Had he been using her father's struggles to undermine her, to further solidify his control over her? Fury bubbled within her. Tony had never cared for anyone but himself, and now it appeared he had been manipulating the situation all along. The memories of his disdain washed over her, fueling her determination to confront him. She would no longer allow him to dictate the terms of her life or the narrative of her family's legacy. On a rainy afternoon, she found herself at the same university cafe where they had shared coffee and dreams in happier times. Now it felt tainted by the weight of their shared history. As she sat at a corner table, the door swung open, and in walked Tony, oblivious to the storm brewing within her. "Laura," he said, a feigned surprise lacing his voice. "What a coincidence." "What do you want, Tony?" She couldn't hide the edge in her tone. He sat across from her, his casual demeanor a stark contrast to the tension crackling in the air. "I just wanted to check in on you. Heard you're doing well in your little doctor gig." The mockery dripped from his words like poison. "Don't act like you care. You've been tangled in my family's affairs, haven't you?" A flicker of surprise crossed his face before he regained his composure. "I was just trying to help." "Help? Or manipulate?" Laura countered, her heart racing. "You've always been good at that." Tony's expression shifted, and for the first time, she saw a crack in his confidence. "You don't understand the business world, Laura. It's cutthroat." "Like you were with me," she shot back, feeling empowered by her own voice. "I'm done letting you dictate my worth. You're not welcome in my life anymore." With those words, Laura stood, leaving him at the table, stunned into silence. She felt lighter as she walked away, empowered by her decision to reclaim her narrative. Days turned into weeks, and Laura focused on her dual battle navigating her father's legacy while maintaining her thriving career in medicine. The more she unearthed about her father's business, the clearer it became that Tony's involvement had been anything but altruistic. The realization deepened her resolve she would not let his greed tarnish the memory of her father or the sacrifices her family had made. But as she dug deeper, she found herself increasingly anxious about the confrontation with Tony that was looming ahead. It was inevitable. She could no longer let him believe he could walk away unscathed. Finally, she decided to confront him at his office. As she walked through the glass doors of the corporate building, Laura felt a surge of adrenaline. The polished floors and sleek designs reminded her of the world she had once inhabited with him, but now it felt foreign. She had stepped out of the shadow of his life, and the empowerment of her choices flooded her with courage. "Tony," she called out as she spotted him at his desk, a smug smile fading from his face as he recognized her. "We need to talk." "Laura, I wasn't expecting you," he replied, attempting to mask his discomfort. "What's this about?" She paced in front of him, her heart pounding with every word she prepared to unleash. "I know you've been involved in my father's business dealings, and I want to understand why. Was it just about the money, or were you trying to tear us apart from the inside?" Tony leaned back in his chair, feigning indifference. "You're overreacting. Business is business." "Business that has affected my family," she snapped, her voice rising. "You've tried to manipulate everything, just like you did with me. I won't allow you to do that again." The tension hung thick in the air, and for a moment, Laura feared she had stepped too far. But then she saw something in Tony's eyes, a flicker of vulnerability, a hint of uncertainty that reminded her he was still the man she had once loved. "I'm not that girl anymore," she continued, her voice steadier now. "I'm a doctor. I have my own life, my own choices. You can't control me or my family." Tony's bravado faltered, and in that moment, Laura saw the truth. He was as lost as she had been, struggling to find his identity without her. "I never wanted to control you," he finally said, his voice quieter. "I just wanted to protect what was ours." "That's not protection, Tony. That's manipulation," she replied, her heart aching for the boy she had once known. After their confrontation, Laura felt a strange mix of relief and confusion. It was a decisive moment that had severed a toxic bond while simultaneously igniting the spark of understanding. For the first time, she viewed Tony not just as her ex-husband, but as a flawed human being grappling with his own demons. Yet she could not allow their shared past to dictate her future. With the business issues looming, Laura poured herself into the challenge. She met with her mother to discuss strategies for restructuring their family's legacy and to develop a plan to address the debts. The process was daunting, but with each step, Laura felt herself gaining ground. As she worked through the financial labyrinth, her mother found solace in Laura's determination. "I'm so proud of you, Laura," her mother said one evening as they reviewed spreadsheets. "You've turned your life around just like your father would have wanted." But there was still one loose end that lingered: the emotional aftermath of her confrontation with Tony. She realized she needed closure, not just for herself but for him as well. Perhaps it was time to reach out, to see if he was willing to discuss the past without the weight of resentment. Laura made the decision to meet Tony one last time. She suggested a neutral ground, a park where they had often walked when they were first dating. It felt like a lifetime ago, a place of innocence and possibility. When she arrived, she found him sitting on a bench, a storm of emotions evident on his face. "I wasn't sure you would come," he admitted, his tone vulnerable. "I almost didn't," Laura replied, taking a seat beside him. "But I realized that to move forward, we need to face what happened between us." He nodded, his eyes locked on the ground. "I'm sorry, Laura. For everything. I was lost in my own fears and didn't know how to support you." "You pushed me away," she said gently. "But I found my way back to myself. I'm proud of who I've become." "I see that," he said, finally meeting her gaze. "I didn't think you would ever find your footing without me." "Maybe I needed to fall to discover my strength," she replied. "I want you to know I forgive you, Tony. But I can't let you back in my life in the same way." "I understand," he said, a flicker of pain crossing his features. "I've had to confront my own failures. It's hard to see you thriving when I'm struggling." Their conversation turned to honest reflections on their past, the mistakes they had made, and the lessons learned. There was an air of reconciliation, a mutual understanding that while they had loved each other once, their paths had diverged too far to reunite. Months passed, and with the shadows of the past behind them, Laura embraced her life with renewed vigor. The family business had been stabilized, and her relationship with her mother had blossomed into one of partnership and support. She thrived in her medical career, finally feeling like she was where she belonged. As winter gave way to spring, Laura found herself enjoying the fruits of her labor. The sun warmed her face as she walked through the park where she had shared that pivotal conversation with Tony. Life felt vibrant and full of possibility. One afternoon, while volunteering at a local clinic, she met a kind-hearted man named David, a fellow doctor who shared her passion for helping others. Their connection blossomed quickly, rooted in mutual respect and admiration. With every shared laugh and late-night conversation, Laura felt her heart open again, allowing herself to trust and love without the scars of the past clouding her vision. As they walked hand in hand through the park one sunny day, Laura smiled at the joy that had filled her life. She had faced her demons, embraced her strengths, and learned the importance of forgiveness not just for Tony but for herself. Turning to David, she said, "I've learned that our past doesn't have to define our future. We are the architects of our lives, no matter how heavy the burdens we carry." David nodded, his eyes warm with understanding. And sometimes, the hardest lessons lead us to the brightest paths. With those words resonating in her heart, Laura knew she had turned a page. The echoes of her past had faded, replaced by the promise of a future full of hope, love, and new beginnings. The journey had shaped her, and she was ready to embrace the unknown with open arms. So if you love this story, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and comment below. Your interaction helps us grow,